Hi, everybody. My name is Aaron. Can we get a quick round of applause for everybody that put this all together and all of the people that are speaking? Thank you very much. So, like I said, my name is Aaron. I'm one of the volunteers at the Community Fridge, and I also host an educational series on YouTube, like they were saying. I also like to teach about mutual aid, the sharing economy, and basically gift giving. For a few years now, I've spent a lot of time trying to teach people the benefits of working together as a community and how to also directly influence our surroundings to create a better, stronger, healthier world. And I want to say that that sounds kind of like platitudes or nice fancy words that don't really have any backing to it, but actually mutual aid is something that's totally different from that, and that involves the sharing economy as well. Mutual aid and direct action is actually not a pipe dream, it's not fantastical, nor is it even out of reach. It is actually the discussion about real tangible solutions that we can do individually and within groups right now to make things a little bit better. So in this talk today, we're going to be discussing a few things. I am obviously going to be talking about the Community Fridge Network and how it works, how it's put together, how we're going to go about furthering it in the future. But first, I want to just talk a little bit about the benefits of mutual aid, exactly what it is, and what sharing economics is all about. Mutual aid as a concept is really no more complicated than the idea of sharing. More specifically, it's the concept of helping one another with no expectation of immediate payment, but it is a mutually beneficial arrangement with everybody that is involved. As a common concept, it's the idea basically of a hand reaching out today will also be able to help you build in the future. And that's kind of the whole idea behind what we do with the Community Fridge. Like I was saying, some of these things, they kind of sound unrealistic, kind of whimsical, but it's actually bore out into the numbers. And I'm going to talk a little bit right now about how crime is actually prevented by doing things like mutual aid and actually giving out free food. Because I think that that's kind of an important thing, and it ends up costing a lot of businesses a lot of money. Shoplifting has been the cause of upwards of $10 billion every single year, and according to many sources, the top 3 items that are actually stolen are razor blades at number 3, baby formula at number 2, and meat at number 1. So essentially what we're talking about here is food, baby food, and hygiene products. Now, it is possible that some people do steal these things because they think that it would be something that they could resell later and make money off of it, but the vast majority of people that steal, specifically food, are probably not doing it because they want to resell it. They're probably doing it because they are in need, right? They probably do it because they need that food to survive. Some of these might be considered common criminals to a lot of people in the general society, whatever that means. But it would seem that the vast majority of them are just regular people that are looking for the basic necessities of life. Now, this causes major concerns for a lot of businesses as they've already invested money in purchasing the goods, the labor involved in displaying them, packaging them, pricing them, the shelves that they're put on, and even the trucks that they use to bring them to where they need to go. Every single product that's stolen is actually a massive loss in investment for any business that's actually putting it out there. There's something that we kind of like to think about is that if people have enough food, they won't need to steal. This provides an opportunity, like I said, of a mutually beneficial relationship because it turns out that most grocery stores, as well as distribution sites and so forth, sometimes upwards of 40% of the food that goes in there ends up being wasted. And that could be in various different ways. It could be through incineration, it could be through throwing it into a landfill, and this causes an immense amount of climate problems, right? You have landfills causing groundwater issues, you have pollution being pumped into the air just because of it all being incinerated, and that's a terrible, horrible thing, and there's an easy way to stop that. So instead of destroying those goods, we could in fact donate them freely to people who need them, and that would be a better solution than destroying them. I'm sure that most people would probably agree with that. If any of you remember at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, what we ended up seeing was massive amounts of things like potatoes, milk, dairy products, and everything like that actually being produced, but then being destroyed because there was nobody that was able to actually buy it. It wasn't a matter of that people didn't need the food, didn't need the milk or the potatoes. It was more of a matter that these people were unable to afford to buy those products, so massive amounts of things were produced, but all of them were thrown away or destroyed. And we think that that's a massive problem, and it also creates several other compounding problems, like the land that could have been used to grow that food and used to feed people is now completely wasted. What do we think that is a good solution to that? Well, obviously giving out the food for free would probably be a much better solution, and it probably sounds counterintuitive to a lot of people because you'd think, okay, well, if you give out the food for free, then there probably won't be as many people that are going into grocery stores and buying the food. And I actually want to take that point and kind of flip it on its head for a second, because if you really think about it, people that are unable to afford to buy food are very unlikely to go into a store and buy food because they don't have the money to do so. If they had access to that food, then when they have the money eventually to buy food, they'd be more likely to buy it. And if grocery stores and supply depots and so forth are willing to give out that food freely, then these people would be less likely to steal from those places and more likely to shop at their businesses. It sounds kind of counterintuitive, I know, but it's actually one of the oldest tricks in the book. Henry Ford, 100 years ago, actually used a very similar tactic when he knew that if he gave people a little bit more money and gave them the opportunity to take time off of work, that they would probably spend that time and money buying his cars. And so he went out and he paid his employees a little bit more. He fought for a slightly shorter work week, and lo and behold, people ended up buying his cars en masse. It's one of the largest corporations in the world. Now, this isn't to say that this is a form of mutual aid or the sharing economy, but it does say something very interesting about incentive structures and how changing small things within the way that businesses are run can make massive changes in society. Okay, so now I'm just going to talk a little bit about the environment, because that's what this whole conference is really all about. Not only is mutual aid and the sharing economy financially beneficial for all, it's also environmentally beneficial for all. For example, the thing that I talked about a moment ago about all the potatoes and milk being destroyed, that's a massive drain on our society, and it's incredibly environmentally unfriendly. Instead of having farms, grocery stores, or supply depots taking that food that is unable to be sold or that was too close to the expiration date and throwing it out and incinerating it and possibly creating far more pollution, all of this food could instead be given freely out to hungry people who need it. So we can see pretty easily how mutual aid and literally just giving people the food that they need is a simple solution to many complicated problems, albeit it's obviously not the only solution, and many of these problems are going to require a multi-level approach, but it is certainly a major start. So now I guess the question that we would have to ask ourselves is, how exactly would something like this be implemented? And I'm going to talk about the community fridge in a second, but a lot of people probably think like, oh, well, that means that we should probably just donate a little bit more to charity the next time that we're at the grocery store, or donate a few cans the next time that we can to some sort of bin or something like that. And though that is a good idea, as a solidarity and a mutual aid organization, we would actually say that that's not the best possible solution. The whole problem with that is that often when people just end up giving to charity, it doesn't end up solving the actual problems that are actually at hand. And what it can actually do is work as a way, more or less, for businesses and so forth to launder their image and make them look a lot better than they actually are, being able to pull a lot of money off of the back end. Now, that to us doesn't seem like a genuinely good way to go about making your business or anything like that look good. We believe that the best possible way to make your business or anything else look good is to do good things and to help people within your community to do those good things. That isn't to say that charity isn't helpful. It certainly is. It helps a lot of people every single day, and we definitely think that it's one aspect that could be used. But it creates a ton of barriers and makes it very difficult for people to actually get the things that they need. Like I said in here, it might sound strong and appealing for a politician to say, hey, look, it's way better if we give all of these groceries to, or whatever it is, to people who we deem worthy of having them. But what that creates is a barrier for people that are not deemed worthy to be able to access those goods, and that's an incredibly dangerous situation to be in. What happens when we deny individuals who do not have a job, who are suffering from addictions issues and all of these other things, the ability to gain food, housing, or health care? Well, they wind up on the street, starving, forced to steal, and often wind up in jail, the emergency room, or dead. We aren't helping anyone by means testing the necessities of life. We are in fact creating a secondary class of people who already are dealing with life's most horrific problems and making those problems even worse. When a charity asks if you've been sober, if you have a home, if you have a job, a phone, a vehicle, internet access, ID, a healthcare card number, or any number of other things, then we are by definition denying those people who don't. This does absolutely nothing to reduce the amount of money that's spent on these services, and in fact makes these services useless and costs the taxpayer far more money in externalities. Now, what exactly do I mean by that? Whenever there is somebody that is on the street and they're homeless, and they end up falling into drug addictions issues, something like that, say they have a fentanyl overdose. All of a sudden, now you have to call in the EMS, you have to call in the fire department, you have to call in the police, and every single one of those vehicles that shows up takes gas, takes money to run, and takes the time and energy away from those people that would otherwise be able to spend that in a different way. I used to be in maintenance for many years, and one of the ideas that we always had was that 5 minutes of maintenance today can save us hours, if not days or years of repairs in the future, and that's the way that we want to look at it here. It's an outrageous financial cost with no identifiable benefit. When people are put out onto the streets or put into jail, it ends up creating a massive amount of money loss for taxpayers, and putting people in the hospital for illnesses that could have easily been prevented months before strains our healthcare system to the brink. Every one of us has probably had to go to the hospital at one point or another. You wait for hours and hours and hours, and part of that is because we aren't doing the maintenance that we need to be doing. Charities, like I was talking about before, are also a way for businesses to launder their image, while also others use it as a way to gain tax write-offs. But average people are honestly starting to see through this facade, and they're starting to call it out. More and more people question whether or not the dollar that they donate every time to the grocery store is really going to help the charity that they're intending it for it to go to, or if in fact it's going to just line the pockets of some CEO 100 miles away. And that's why we believe that mutual aid organizations, the gift economy, and actually giving people things that they need freely is a much better way for businesses and people and everything like that to actually help their societies. That's why mutual aid organizations do not offer the ability to use charity numbers for the most part. We don't rely on charities or charitable donations, and we mostly try to rely on the individuals within a community to be able to come together as a community and solve those problems themselves. The best way for a business to have a positive image, like I was saying before, is to do positive things. That's not because of some financial gain or the ability to hold up your arms and say that you've helped people when in fact you're gaining money off the back end. That's why we believe in the idea of solidarity and not charity. Now with that little spiel done, I'm going to talk a little bit about how the fridge works and exactly what it is. So the community fridge is a very basic, simple idea. All it is just a fridge. Oh, there it is right there. So all it is basically just a fridge that people can donate to whenever they want to, 24/7, with absolutely no barriers to receive the food or to take the food in general, outside of no uncooked meat, no unlabeled goods, that sort of thing. We want to make sure that people stay healthy. We make sure that every single one of the fridges that we produce or that we've set up has been built inside of an enclosure, usually a wooden structure. That is basically keeping things out of the elements and allows the equipment inside to stay functioning. And often it'll have a small free store involved in it where you can get clothes and so forth. And most of the time there is also a pantry, a freezer, and a fridge. So you have the ability to have refrigerated goods, frozen goods, and dry goods as well. Our small group has worked on probably starting, I think, about 4 or 5 fridges within this city, though we primarily work with just one. And we think that that's actually kind of a benefit that since we are from that community, we work together within that community to make sure that the fridge is running properly and that sort of thing. But we also like to work with the rest of the community fridge network so that we can provide food and everything like that to everyone collaboratively. Right? So we may not work directly with them, but we work as a collaborative network, sort of half independent, half collective effort. The building that we actually created would have cost something like $10,000 to create. It was a very seemingly expensive project, but it was freely donated by everybody involved. Basically, all of the work was given to us for free, and people worked together to actually create the thing. We had people from construction companies, we had people from different organizations all coming together and creating this fridge, and we ended up even having an extra $10,000 worth of work donating from a boring company. They're not actually that boring, they were pretty cool. And they donated an extra $10,000 worth of boring work to run some power from the church parking lot, that's where we're on, to run power from the church to the actual fridge itself. So now we have the ability to have power out there and lights, and it's a really nice thing. But that isn't to say that every single fridge needs to cost $10,000. That's just what we ended up with because that's the community that we had. We went around in the community and we talked to people, found out what their skills were, what their strengths were, and worked with that to make sure that they could bring that to the table when we were building the fridge. And it just so happened that they did a beautiful, beautiful job, but you can do it on no budget at all. We have other fridges in the city that are built just with 2x4s and plywood, and they cost virtually nothing to put together. And all of it just really depends on how people want to be interacting with the thing and how people are interested in working with it. When we first started the Community Fridge Network, we went around basically to every house in the area, every business in the area, and we asked them, is this something that you guys actually want? That's one of the main things that we want to do, is we want to ask people, does this fit with your community? Is this something that we can actually work together with? And we ended up having amazing support. We ended up having hundreds of people come out and donate their time, donate their resources, and donate all of these other things to actually make it function. And we believe that it is a very beautiful thing to have, and it's kind of a nice little shining example of what a community can do together without having to spend a single dollar and just using the resources and tools that they already have to do so. Everything is organized democratically with a horizontal power structure that allows everybody in the community to have their say and a seat at the table on how everything is run. Basically, that means that there is nobody in charge of the fridge. It is an autonomous thing all by itself. But everybody in the community has a say in how it's run, and we all work democratically and with consensus to make sure that things are done in a way that the community likes. Over the course of the last year, like I said, we've had hundreds of volunteers and also hundreds of written testimonials from individuals and businesses alike, all in our community, that have expressed not only how wonderful it is to have a resource like this so close, but how absolutely necessary it is in these tumultuous times. So with all that, I do want to just conclude by giving a little bit of an idea of what we want to see in the future. So, it's clear that food insecurity is an important aspect of what we are doing here, but it's also not the final step. There are many different complications within the system that we currently exist in that have to be addressed, and mutual aid and direct action are some of the main tools that we can use to fix it. We want to live in a world where we no longer have to fight each other for personal gain and enrichment, but rather work with one another for the benefit of all humankind. If we build structures based on the ideas of working together for mutual benefit, with no immediate expectations other than a happier, healthier world, I think that we will be on the right track. Mutual aid and the sharing economy is not just a concept, but it is indeed a fact of life. It's inscribed on our DNA and is a factor in evolution. It's, in my opinion, unnatural for us to exist in the way that we do, pushing down those who have nothing and selfishly amassing wealth for a tiny few. Only when we work together for the benefit of all humanity can we truly be free. Thank you.